Good morning, and welcome to Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren, where we practice peace, service, and openness to all. It is wonderful to have you with us this morning, joining us virtually, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I am Pastor Jason, this is Pastor Josh, and someone's not here this morning.
We noticed that Pam's not with us this morning.
There's a heart-shaped hole right here.
Yes, there is.
For Pam. Pam is not feeling well this morning, and that was something that happened yesterday, and so we are sending our best to you, Pastor Pam. I'm sure that you are watching. We're sending our love and our prayers to you as you heal, as you start to feel better. So, for better or worse, they're stuck with just the two of us.
We're missing the rose between two thorns.
It's true. It's very true. It's very true. And you will also notice, Josh, that there is no one in the sanctuary right now.
I did notice that. What's up with that, buddy?
Well, here we are. We find ourselves back in a situation like it was 6 months ago, as we were coming out of this pandemic. When we first started, we left one another and moved to a virtual space and had planned to do it for a couple weeks, and then it ended up being over a year. And we were so excited and celebratory as we were able to come back. And since the summer, we've been meeting together regularly here in person with a number of mitigations like wearing masks. But this week, if you've seen the numbers, the COVID numbers, the hospitalizations, the infection rates have skyrocketed. And so we made the very difficult decision of asking you all to remain safely at home this morning and still worship with us, just not here in person. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in this morning. We are all connected through the Spirit. We are all holding each other together in love. We're just not doing it physically here together within the building. So did you have anything else you wanted to say about worship today happening any differently?
Well, I would say that since you are at home, feel free to robustly sing the hymns and the music.
Right.
We'll be doing a lot of our favorite familiar hymns. And even though we can't be with you, we know we are all together in spirit.
Yeah, and we don't have to wear masks at home, too, which is
That's
kind of nice. So one quick announcement that I have this morning is that our senior high youth will be gathering at 12 noon today via Zoom. You should have that Zoom link, but we'll make sure to send that out to you again so that you have that. This is a conversation about National Youth Conference, just providing some information about registration, about the exciting trip that we'll be taking. So if you are a senior high youth or no one, make sure that you join us today at 12 noon for information about that trip. But Josh, here we are, Hebrew Bible characters revisited. If you were looking at our social media or you saw the email, you would have seen that this morning we were going to talk about Ruth. Or should I say Pam was going to talk about.
She will. She will next week.
She will, yes. But instead of Ruth today, we are fortunate that you will be talking to us about
Job.
Okay, so what's going to be happening this morning?
Well, just to say a little bit about this series that we have coming up. It's going to be for the next 4 weeks. We're very excited about it. The Hebrew Bible offers us such a robust wealth of wisdom, knowledge, guidance for us. And one of the things that I feel like that as a New Testament church and as followers of Jesus, a lot of what we focus on in worship is the scriptures from the New Testament. But our Hebrew Bible can give us so much in terms of language for expressing how we feel. That's one of the things that in seminary, as we explored a lot of the books, the Psalms, the ancient books, just that the characters in the Hebrew Bible, they're keeping it real. And they dealt with a lot, and they are able to find sometimes language that shares how we're feeling that we can't always access in when we're communicating with God, to share those feelings that sometimes aren't always the most pleasant. And those times when we're feeling a little bit stressed, upset. And I don't know about you, buddy, but these days it seems like, it could be wrong, but maybe all of us can relate a little bit to Job in the sense that sometimes it just seems like we kind of get bad news after bad news, right? That we keep hoping that, well, maybe that was the last of it, and maybe today will be a little bit better, and then sometimes we're dealing with things that we didn't necessarily want or expect. So I think looking at the book of Job feels more timely than ever. And I would say even yesterday when I got the call from Pam and it was, Josh, I have the sermon done, but I can't preach it tomorrow. So I was like, no problem. So we're actually revisiting something that I actually worked on in seminary. It was a little bit of a new take on the book of Job, and I think it fits really well into our Hebrew Bible series. So we welcome you to worship. Thank you so much for being with us. We are together in spirit.
Yes. Well, as Josh just mentioned, these are challenging times. It does feel as if blow after blow sometimes happens. Just when we think things are getting better, they may take a turn for the worse. And so we're reminded this morning as we look at the story of Job, how these things happen over time and how we are followers of Jesus and how we have hope for the future, but how challenging it is in those moments of despair. I'm going to be reading this prayer that is for deliverance from false desires and fears. Deliver me, O Jesus, from the desire to be esteemed, from the desire to be loved, from the desire to be honored, from the desire to be praised, from the desire to be preferred to others, from the desire to be consulted, from the desire to be approved, from the desire to be popular. Deliver me, O Jesus, from the fear of being humiliated, from the fear of being despised, from the fear of being rebuked, from the fear of being slandered, from the fear of being forgotten, from the fear of being wronged, from the fear of being treated unfairly, and from the fear of being suspected. And dear Jesus, grant me the grace to desire that others might be more loved than I, that others might be more esteemed than I, that in the opinion of the world, others may increase and I decrease, that others may be chosen and I may be set aside, that others may be preferred to me in everything, that others may become holier than I, provided that I, too, become as holy as I can. Amen.
Faith in his excellent word.
Well, good morning. Today, during our children's time, I thought I would read about the story of Job from one of the resources we use here, which is the Shine On Story Bible. And this is the story that talks about the book of Job. There once was a man in the land of Uz named Job. Job loved God and turned away from evil. Job had 10 children, thousands of animals, and many servants. One day, a servant came to Job. "Your oxen and donkeys have been captured, and the servants tending them were killed." While he was still speaking, another servant came. "Fire fell from the sky and burned up your sheep and the servants tending them." Then another servant arrived. "Some raiders stole your camels and killed the servants that were tending them." And still another servant told him, "Your sons and daughters were killed when a great wind blew the house down on them." Ooh. Job tore his robe, he shaved his head, he cried out, "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Job remained faithful to God even when everything went wrong. But one day, Job became sick with sores all over his body. He sat in the ashes, scratching his itchy skin with a piece of broken pottery. Job's wife said, "Just give up. It's hopeless." Job said, "God gives us both good and bad in our lives." Then Job's friends came. They wept, tore their clothes, and put dust on their heads. They sat in silence with Job for 7 days and 7 nights. But later, they said that it must be Job's fault, that God must be punishing him. Job did not blame God, but he was very sad. He said, "I wish I had never been born. I wish that day could be erased from history." Job wondered why bad things happened when he had tried to follow God's way. Then God answered Job out of a whirlwind. God reminded Job of many things in creation. In the end, God blessed Job with twice as much as he had before. Job owned thousands of sheep, camels, oxen, and donkeys. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. Job lived to be an old man and even lived to see his great-grandchildren. Well, in the end, I guess things ended up all right for Job. But there was a time in his life that was awful. Perhaps you too have experienced some really bad days, some really frustrating or challenging times in your life. Perhaps maybe not as severe as our friend Job here, but certainly you have all experienced periods of sadness and worry or being upset about things that are unfortunate in your life, things that just don't seem fair. And in this story, we have this example of his friends coming along to comfort Job. And at first, they're sitting with him in quiet and providing that support and comfort. But then they start to say, "Well, Job, this must be your fault. These bad things just don't happen to good people. So think really hard, Job. What was it that you did that offended God so much for this awfulness to fall upon you?" And I don't think that was really helpful to Job. I think that just made him more sad and more frustrated. So, can we remember a couple things from this story? If you're going through some of those difficult times, remember the steadfast love that Job still held for God, even in these challenging and difficult times. Understandable to be frustrated and to be upset and to wonder and to worry and to be curious. But still, in his heart of hearts, Job still held that strong faith and trust in God. And also, sometimes we aren't the Job of the story. Sometimes we have the opportunity to come alongside someone else who's suffering. And so may we take this lesson from their friends. How good and important it is to be supportive of those people around us when they're suffering. To comfort and to aid, to sit quietly in silence, to be supportive of our friends when they're in need. But may we also learn that it's not entirely helpful to blame people and make them feel bad and even worse for difficult things that they're encountering. So may we come together in love and support for those who need it and remember a steadfast faith that we hold for God. One way that we can continue to come together and support one another is through prayer. And I think prayer has an especially powerful meaning at a time like this when I look out and I see that no one is here physically. And yet I know that through prayer we can remain connected to God and to one another. So despite not being here present with one another, may we all join together in these moments of silence and a spoken prayer. Awesome God, there is much pain and suffering in the world. Here, on this cold winter day, we remember those who may not have places to stay warm. We think of all the people who are alone and isolated, especially those who suffer in sickness. May you provide comfort and warmth to the many who desire it. We come to you in prayer, God, seeking aid, your help, your wisdom. May we find strength in your word, in your purpose for us, in our capacity to love. We desire healing for those who are sick. We cry out for mercy and justice for those who are oppressed. We name this evil of greed, selfishness, our overconsumption, our quest for power, our ignorance, our complacency, our role when we are the oppressor. We pray for healing, God, not just in the sickness of our bodies, but in the corruption of our minds and our desires. We pray to desire you, O God. While we will never truly understand and grasp all the complexities of this universe, may we hold on to you and to your love. Help us to support one another in these times of need. And we thank you, God, for all of the blessings and good fortune that we experience in our lives today. Even amid the suffering of ourselves and others, we are remaining thankful to you for those moments of joy and laughter and love. May we heal and comfort a troubled world through your goodness, God. Transform us as followers of Jesus so that others might see that light to guide them in their darkness. Give us the strength and courage to be your hands and feet in this world, now and always. Amen. Well, it is that time in the service where we come together to give and to think about the giving that we offer to the congregation and to the world around us. You'll see on your screen that there are different ways to give. And once again, we found ourselves back in a unique situation. Well, there will be no offering plate passed through your living room today. So we encourage you to think about the different ways that you might give. And it's a new year, so it's also worth considering how you might develop new ways of giving or different avenues towards providing your offering. I know for me personally, we've set up a giving within Breeze, within our online giving, which allows us to give monthly. And so I would encourage you to think about that. Perhaps if you have that set up, this is the time of year to reevaluate how much you're giving and what works best for you. But during this time when we are not together, we are again reminded that there are lots of things that connect us. And the work of this church is done because of your faithful giving. And so we thank you.
And when I rise, let me rise up like a bird without regret, joyfully. And when I fall, let me fall down like a leaf without regret, gratefully. And when I rise, let me rise up like a bird without regret, joyfully. And when I fall, let me fall down like a leaf without regret, gratefully.
The book of Job is considered to be one of the greatest literary works of all time. Job is also one of the most well-known stories and literary characters from the Bible. Even though Job is not an Israelite, nor is the story set in Israelite land. The book addresses questions that plagued humanity since the beginning of time and feel especially relevant today during this global pandemic. Why do people suffer? Why would a good God permit the manifestation of evil, often called the question of theodicy? Why do bad things happen to good people? How do we respond to suffering and to loss? And where is God in all of our suffering? The book of Job, in a nutshell, tells a story of a man from the land of Uz who, while not an Israelite, has an understanding of the Israelite God. Job had a prosperous life, great riches, and a large family. And more importantly, we read, he was blameless and upright in the eyes of God. So blameless and upright, in fact, that the narrative tells us that a character called Satan, or the Hebrew Hasatan, challenges God to put Job through the test, to see if he will still be so upright and good if his fortune is taken away and a lot of bad things happen to him. Hasatan says to take away all his stuff, put him through a world of suffering, and see if then he is so blameless and upright. It's important to note that the literary character of Hasatan, also translated as adversary in the book of Job, is not the Satan or devil that we would read in the New Testament. In this story, Hasatan is a member of God's heavenly court, one who is testing God. God agrees to the challenge. Job loses all of his property, his children, and eventually even his health, dealing with painful sores from head to toe. After unthinkable tragedy befalls Job, his three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, meet and comfort him. At least, they try to. They start off just sitting with him for 7 days and nights without saying a word. And in many ways, we could say that this was Job's friends at their best, just being there with him by his side. It's when they start talking and trying to make sense of everything that we get the dialogue that makes up most of the book of Job. Each one of Job's friends tries, in increasing levels of intensity, to get Job to fess up to what he did to deserve all this. From their perspective, he must have done something wrong, right? He must have made God angry in some way. In fact, he must not only have done something wrong, but he must have done it in secret. In their minds, to make things better, he just needs to own up to his wrongdoings to God. Job, getting more irritated with each comment, fires back at each of his friends, saying he did nothing to deserve this. Job also does a lot of complaining. Now, growing up, I would often hear the phrase, the patience of Job, used for someone who seemed to be able to remain calm, reserved, and patient through really bad circumstances. After reading the book of Job, I was sure whoever came up with that phrase didn't actually read the book. Well, Job certainly does have a lot to complain about. Complain he does, offering some classic biblical complaints like, woe to the day I was born, or to his friends, miserable comforters are you, or one of my favorites, even my breath repulses my wife. But in all this complaining, Job never does curse God. Job concedes that God's ways are beyond full human understanding. And after all these increasingly heated exchanges with his friends, God eventually shows up in a whirlwind addressing Job, in essence telling him that he's right, that God's ways cannot be fully understood in human terms. In the final lines of Job, we read, with God first addressing Job's friends, after the Lord had spoken these words to Job, the Lord said to Eliphaz, my wrath is kindled against you and against your two friends, for you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. Now therefore take 7 bulls and 7 rams, go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering, and my servant Job shall pray for you. For I will accept his prayer not to deal with you according to your folly, for you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has done. So Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar went and did what the Lord had told them, and the Lord accepted Job's prayer. And the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he had prayed for his friends. And the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then there came to him all his brothers and sisters, and all who had known him before. They ate bread with him in his house. They showed him sympathy and comforted him for all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. And each of them gave him a piece of money and a gold ring. The Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning, and he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He named the first Jemimah, the second Keziah, and the third Karen Hakbuk. And in all the land there were no women so beautiful as Job's daughters, and their father gave them an inheritance along with their brothers. After this, Job lived for 140 years and saw his children and his children's children 4 generations. And Job died old and full of days. And that's it. That's how the book of Job ends. And I admit, I found myself asking, how can a story so classic, told through so many centuries, be considered so great when this was the ending? I mean, sure, the book as a whole addresses so much related to suffering, but there's no real conclusion here. No epilogue, no post-credit scene, no teaser trailer for a sequel. Job 2, the legend continues. When I was in seminary, I had the privilege of getting to work with one of the foremost scholars on the book of Job, Dr. Chuck Melchert. After a semester of detailed and sometimes grueling study of the book, our capstone task was the challenge to write one more final chapter to the book of Job. And that was it. Taking into account all that we read, all that we studied, and all that was shared in class together, we write a final chapter to Job. There were no other instructions given, no specific length or structure, no specific questions to answer, just whatever we felt called to write. What follows is what I'm calling Job chapter 43, told from the perspective of Job many years after the events of the book. Job chapter 43. It's been almost 140 years since the events that forever changed my life. In my late years, I feel compelled to reflect a bit on those events and my life since then. When God came out of that whirlwind, I was certain my days were over. After all that had happened and all the miserable comfort of my friends, I assumed that it was all about to finally come to an end. God had come to take me out of my misery. But to my surprise, it wasn't only the end, but it was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. God came and questioned me as to whether I was able to do the things that God could. God asked me to answer him, in which I responded that I was of small account. God continued, and I finished by telling God that I had uttered what I did not understand. Then, to my amazement, my eyes saw God. And not only did I not die, which I had heard from Israelites means certain death if you see God, but after praying for my friends, God gave me twice over what I had before. After taking so much from me and giving me no decipherable answer as to why, God gave me gifts that I never asked for or expected. As I said, in these late years of my life, I feel compelled that I must reflect on these experiences. I can keep silent about these things no more. Since those events, I've thought a lot about my friends and my brothers and sisters. I was so mad at my friends Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar for what a terrible job they did comforting me. Even God backed me up and told them they didn't speak of God what was true, as I had. But as mad as I was at them, And as wrong as they were, they did stay with me during those times that I lost everything. I mean, even my own brothers and sisters only comforted me after the Lord had given me twice what I had before. It was almost as if I was good enough then. Where were they during those times that I really needed the comfort the most? The only people I had during those times were those 3 fools. But those 3 fools stayed by my side. Even as I got more and more angry and caustic with them, they still stayed there. Even when the whirlwind came and God showed up, they still stood by my side. Even when God said that God's wrath was kindled against Eliphaz right to his face, he still stood with me, along with the other 2. I know I irritated Zophar so much, but even he stayed with me. Then, when God instructed them to take 7 bulls and 7 rams, which was a big investment at the time, and offer themselves a burnt offering while I prayed for them, they did so without question. And it was only after I prayed for my friends, miserable comforters as they were, that God restored what I had. It was almost as if after everything that happened, God needed to see my real character. God wanted to see how I would act when I was called upon to do so. I had nothing I could offer anyone. I was totally broke financially. I had no status of any sort. I was a mess to look at, and even my wife was repulsed by my breath. But God showed that I did have one simple yet powerful thing that I could offer: prayer. After all the complaining, I realized that I never really asked God for help for myself, for my wife, for my family, or for anyone really. Sure, if we define prayer as talking to God, I did plenty of that, but I never really asked God for help as much as I was just asking for answers. But in that moment when I asked God, when God asked me to pray, God asked me to pray not for myself but for others. And not just anyone, but the 3 people that were irritating me the most. But it was in this unselfish act I did on behalf of others that changed everything for me. I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. Why in the world would God make me, of all people, pray for my friends? They were wrong. I was right. God told us that. Yet, I had to be the one to pray for them. But it hit me afterwards that one of the many lessons God taught me was that in those times of immeasurable darkness, we can still pray. And it was in that moment that I prayed for others that things turned around for me. This was mind-blowing. It seemed like a cruel trick at first. I mean, what about me? What about my own self-care? Of all the people in the world at that time, I certainly felt like I had every right to think only of what I was going through. But it was when I shifted my focus to others that I was rewarded. It was when I did what I could, as little as it was, that things turned around. And I always remembered this. And I guess I have to give those 3 friends credit. I still don't know what to make of the young boy Elihu after all these years. They stayed with me. Even my own brothers and sisters were nowhere to be found until I was rich again. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with all that happened. Even though I was blessed with more beautiful children, nothing could replace the ones that were taken away. I still wonder why a God that can do all things would ever let something like that happen. Based on what God told me, I guess it's something I'll never know. I still find myself wondering why all those horrible things happened. And why did they all happen at one time? I also reflected a lot on the fact that, like my friends, through it all, God was also always present with me. God heard everything I said. God was with me to hear what my 3 friends said as well. And when God came out of the whirlwind, it was really as if God was there all along. I still cry, weep, find myself angry at what happened, even after all this time. Some days are easier than others to have faith. For the longest time, I kept looking over my shoulder, just waiting for the next thing to happen or the axe to fall again. It's taken me a long time to sleep well, and I still don't. It's taken me a long time to stop questioning what I did to deserve what happened to me. I used to question all the time where I went wrong. Surely I must have done something to warrant all that happened to me. But as I've gotten older, I've come to terms more with the idea that sometimes bad things just happen. But through it all, God is present. I'm not alone. We are not alone.
Your kingdom come, your will be done, now that we have become your own. Let the prayer of our hearts daily be, God make us your family, God make us your family. The eyes of the blind shall be opened, the ears of the deaf will hear, the chains of the lame will be broken, streams will flow in deserts of fear. Your kingdom come, your will be done, now that we have become your own. Let the prayer of our hearts daily be, God make us your family, God make us your family. The ransom of the Lord will return. The islands will sing God's song at last. Chaff from the wheat shall be burned. God's kingdom on earth it will come to pass. Your kingdom come, your will be done, now that we have become your own. Let the prayer of our hearts daily be, God make us your family, God make us your family. The nations will see their shame, the one true God will be adored. They'll turn from their fortune and fame, God's holy mountain will be restored. Your kingdom come, your will be done, now that we have become your own. Let the prayer of our hearts daily be, God make us your family, God make us your family, God make us your family.
I don't know about you, but I think we can all relate to Job. But through it all, God is with us, and we are together. We are together in spirit. I'm grateful that we have the technology to be able to be worshiping together, and I'm certainly grateful for our AV team, Jerry, Pat, Kirk, last week Rob and Herb, for helping us to be able to stay together in spirit, to be able to worship God together. As you go about your week, let's remember that God is with us. Let's remember that we do have each other. Go in peace, go in love, go in faithfulness.
Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father, there is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth. Thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide. Strength for today, bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside.